It's the Agribusiness Report. I'm Tony St. James. We're joined today by Allison Rivera. Allison is with the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. Great to see you.
Happy to join you today.
Okay, so we talk transportation every time we talk with you, and probably a good place to start today. A lot of different things going on. First off, why is transportation really an important subject for producers, let's say at a cow-calf level or a stocker level?
Right. So not only are we moving cattle across this country in very large numbers every single day, but it's also the inputs. I think a lot of times people forget how much we need on the input side, whether it's feed or gasoline or fertilizer. There's a lot of items that move across this country that our producers need, as well as us needing to move the animals to the next stage of their process. So these supply chain issues that we're running into are causing issues kind of across the board in many different ways.
One of the things we've talked about in the past is electronic logging devices, ELD. There's also hours of service, and it seems like we keep talking about extensions. Are we still talking extensions?
Absolutely, and it can get very confusing. We are sitting in an hours of service exemption for livestock haulers due to COVID-19. It's an emergency declaration out of DOT. It has been very much month to month or 3 months here, and it's because NCBA has stressed the need for that exemption to be extended. So we are currently sitting in an hours of service exemption until August 31st. At that point, if we're still in a place where our supply chain issues are of concern, which I'd love to say they won't be, but you know, we never know, then we'll have to go back to FMCSA and ask for another extension. On the ELD front, it's kind of the same thing, except we move through Congress through the appropriations process to get that ELD delay each year. You know, I ran into an issue with a hauler the other day where the state trooper, at the state trooper level, they still are not aware that we're sitting in an ELD delay. And it does cause a lot of frustration for a lot of our haulers. And so we've been working with DOT to make sure that every year that we get this exemption from the ELDs, which we're in year 5, that they make sure they get that information down to the local level, which is so important because that's where the enforcement is truly taking place. So we are already fighting back against the ELDs once again. The House just passed their transportation package out of the House, off the floor, and our ELD delay language for livestock haulers is once again in there. Next step, we got to get through the Senate.
We talk about supply chains, and we really can't talk about that without also talking about obviously inputs and exports that are handled through ports as well. Are you watching it from that scope as well? Absolutely.
You know, the port situation is not only a labor issue, which we do run into every time there's a renegotiated contract at the port level, whether it's our Long Beach issue. Also, a lot of the ocean carriers have been, you know, misbehaving, if you will. And so working with the Federal Maritime Commission to make sure that those entities are following the rules. They're not overcharging and under providing, if you will, and not delivering. And so we've been working with a coalition, a host of individuals in town and other ag groups to just make sure we're holding some feet to the fire in that world, because it is so important as far as our exports are concerned. On top of that, we have a lot of rail issues that have been kind of out there for a little while, and we hope to see some NCBA policy soon so that we can dive deep into that. You know, we're not hauling cattle by rail, but we haul all of our feed that way, and we've got to make sure the animals get fed. And so it's a little bit similar situation to what we're seeing on the port side. So NCBA has kind of started working a little more in that space and keeping a close eye on the rail industry and making sure that they're delivering and on time.
Delivering and on time. Will we be able to deliver on time a 2023 Farm Bill?
That was an amazing segue.
Thank you.
I will just say, you know, as a former Hill staffer, you know, Congress is a great place, but man, sometimes they're not real good with time management. I'm also an optimist. I think we'll get it done. You know, one of the important things that I think people are starting to kind of come to the realization of as we hit elections in November. We're going to have a ton of current members of Congress and a lot of new members of Congress that have never had to take a Farm Bill vote. So a lot of what we're going to have to do, not only talking about our priorities and what our producers want to see in this next Farm Bill, we're also going to have to talk about just the importance of getting a Farm Bill done and how important it is to the ag economy in this country, how important it is that we have policies in place to protect our industry so that we can feed people here in the U.S. and all the responsibilities we have to feed people across the world.
And obviously that is something you have to take to members of Congress, but don't you really have to take that into the committee level as well?
Right. So you're going to see a lot of new members on House and Senate Ag as well, probably a few more so on the House side, but it's going to be a lot of educating. It's going to be, them asking us what we need and us providing all that information to them. We are going to our summer business meeting soon, and our members will set those priorities that myself and the rest of our team take into this Farm Bill process. We know that the animal health provisions that we got into the last bill are extremely important. The vaccine bank, as we see ASF, continue to run rampant around the globe, and a vaccine is kind of out there, kind of circulating, if you will, in hopes, our pork friends hope that eventually they can possibly put an ASF vaccine in that bank. Right now it's got FMD, and we want to make sure it stays strong and we have the resources there that we need. On top of that, protecting voluntary conservation programs. We know that as the climate conversations continue, that we want to make sure that these things are done right, and voluntary is the right way to do them, and just to bolster those programs. On top of that, I think what we've seen over the last couple of years is the even greater need for risk management programs, and to make sure that those programs like PRF and LRP have what they need, and that they are also bolstered, and that if changes need to be made through a Farm Bill, that we get it done. And then disaster programs. Again, we have seen all kinds of natural disasters across the country, whether fire, wildfire, drought, hurricane, tornadoes, you name it. We want to make sure that those programs have what they need to cover our producers and make sure that they're there and viable.
So you mentioned summer business meeting, and you also mentioned how you didn't say this, but you get your marching orders from your members.
Absolutely.
For those who might not be happy with the direction the industry is going right now for whatever reason, how can they get involved? How can they make their voice heard?
Absolutely. So becoming an NCBA member is critical. Again, everything that I work on comes directly from our members. If we don't have policy on it, we keep a close eye on it, but until we get policy on the books that comes directly from our voting members, it's something kind of on the periphery. So it's so important. You can go to ncba.org, check out our policy priorities for 2022, see what we've been working on, see how we can be helpful to you as a producer, and it's just so important to be engaged. And members of Congress recognize the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, and when we come into a room and we bring producers in, they are interested to hear what we have to say because we come with credibility.
You know what? It's always great to visit with you. I always learn something new, and I enjoy your passion. Thanks.
Thank you.
Again, Allison Rivera, National Cattlemen's Beef Association, on today's Agribusiness Report.